Are you going to finish that, sir? Under the dim, golden shimmer of chandeliers shaped like frozen stars, the hum of affluence whispered through every inch of the pavon, the city's most elite restaurant. It was the kind of evening that wore silence like a tailored coat. Nothing moved, save for the elegant notes of a piano curling softly through the air. Each table sat like its own little kingdom, glowing in candlelight, adorned with crystal, murmuring with quiet wealth and unspoken power. In the furthest corner, almost hidden behind a curtain of orchids and shadow, sat John Maxwell, 48 years old, a tech giant, billionaire, widower, his suit, Armani, his watch, platinum, his posture, polished perfection. Yet nothing on him, no fabric, no metal, no grooming, could mask the hollowness that seemed to echo inside his chest. Before him, a filet mignon rested untouched. It smelled rich, divine even, but it might as well have been dust. Across from him sat an empty chair, silent, accusing. He gripped the stem of his wine glass a little tighter, the crimson liquid inside swirling like a memory. 10 years, a decade had passed since the wreck, since the twisted metal, the flashing lights, and the sudden absence of Lillian, his wife, and Caleb, their 3-year-old son. In those years, John had buried himself in silence, in routine, in spreadsheets and boardrooms and empire building. It all worked, mostly, until nights like this. He lifted the glass slowly. Its weight felt heavier than it should have, as if memory had settled in its base. But just as he brought it to his lips, "Excuse me, could I have your leftovers, sir?" The voice was quiet, fragile, barely more than a breath, but it sliced through the air like a snapped violin string. John turned sharply, startled. Standing beside his table was a young woman, maybe 19 at most. Her blonde hair was pulled into a mess of bun, strands falling out in tired, uneven curls. Her coat was worn thin, clinging to her shoulders against the early autumn cold. In her arms, wrapped in a faded blanket, was a baby, no more than 8 months old, staring wide-eyed at the steaming food on John's plate. Around them, the restaurant froze. Folks paused mid-air. Conversations trailed into stunned silence. A nearby waiter started toward them, brows already drawn in concern. But John lifted a hand. Just a slight gesture. Enough to halt everything. He studied her face. There was no shame in it. No game. No manipulation. Just exhaustion, layered with something deeper. Fierce, silent determination. She wasn't begging. She wasn't stealing. She was surviving. And not for herself, for the tiny life pressed close against her. John felt his throat tighten. The candlelight flickered between them. Something shifted. Not a lightning bolt. Not redemption. Not yet. But a flicker. A breath. A crack in the decade-old walls he'd spent his life reinforcing. He couldn't explain why, but something about her held him captive. Her presence, her stillness. Her hair was tangled, catching the candlelight like threads of broken gold. Her coat hung crooked on her shoulders, sleeves too short, the fabric fraying at the elbows. Her sneakers were soaked through, stained with city grime, barely holding together. But it wasn't her appearance that caught him. It was her eyes. They didn't plead. They didn't tremble. They held him, steady, quiet, and filled with something stronger than desperation. Dignity. Defense. A sorrow too heavy for someone so young. It was a kind of courage a person gains only when they've run out of everything, except the will to protect what they love. She wasn't asking for herself. She was asking for her child. John hesitated, just a breath, before nudging the plate forward with 2 fingers. "Take it," he said softly, barely above a whisper. And she didn't snatch it, didn't wolf it down. Instead, with the gentleness of someone handling something sacred, she reached into her satchel and pulled out a small cloth. Clean, though frayed. Carefully, she wrapped the mashed potatoes and meat, folding the corners like she was saving treasure, not scraps. Then, slowly, she knelt down on one knee. Cradling the baby closer, she retrieved a small plastic spoon from her coat pocket. With steady hands, she scooped up a spoonful, blew on it, and gently offered it to the child. The baby opened his mouth instantly. The moment the potatoes touched his tongue, he let out a sound, a gurgling coo, full of joy so pure it hit John like a fist. His tiny hands patted the girl's chest. A grin bloomed across his chubby cheeks like a sunrise after a bitter winter. John looked away, just for a second, blinking back something that had crept into his vision. But when the baby let out another delighted sigh, he turned back, unable to look away. The girl said nothing. She just kept feeding him, one spoonful at a time, her hands steady, her breathing calm. She didn't glance around to see who was watching or judging. The stays didn't matter. She was here for one reason only, to feed her son. John felt something twist inside him. Slow, deep, ancient. It wasn't pity. It wasn't guilt. It was a quiet, unshakable truth that he was witnessing something sacred. A kind of love that can't be bought, replaced, or fully understood, unless you've known loss. When the baby finally seemed full, the girl carefully wrapped what was left of the food in the cloth, tucked it into her worn satchel, and gently adjusted the blanket around the child's tiny body. Then she stood. She looked at John, just once, and gave a faint nod. Not a thank you. Something else. An acknowledgement of what had just passed between them, of what he had seen. And then she turned, moving silently through the maze of white linens and whispered luxury, out into the cold night beyond the restaurant's polished glass doors. John didn't move. He simply sat there, staring at the place she had stood. The flicker of the candlelight painted shifting shadows over his untouched wine, the vacant chair, and the life he had once known. Before logic could interfere, before the familiar voice in his head could talk him out of it, he stood. Quietly, purposefully. He placed his napkin on the table, gave a slight nod to the stunned waiter frozen nearby, and stepped into the night. He didn't understand why. He just knew he had to. John followed from a distance, his footsteps muffled against the sidewalk as the noise of the city softened behind him. The girl slipped into a narrow alley, clutching the baby against her like armor. Her pace was quick but cautious, each step a calculation, as if the darkness itself might rise up and consume them. He didn't follow out of pity. He followed because something inside him recognized something in her. The alley opened into a cracked, forgotten parking lot, bordered by old brick buildings. A few abandoned cars rested like empty shells, but one, a faded Navy sedan, looked different. It was lived in. Fog clung to its windows, paint peeled at the edges. But it was a shelter, a home. She didn't hesitate. She opened the back door and gently climbed in, nestling the baby against her chest. The back seat held a thin blanket, threadbare, laid out like a mattress. She whispered something to the infant that only he could hear. Then, softly, almost too softly to be real, she began to sing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." John stood in the shadows, motionless, breath caught in his throat. The baby gripped her collar, his small eyes fluttering closed as her voice wrapped around the space like a lullaby woven from threadbare hope. The surroundings were bleak, but the love was radiant. He stepped forward. Some instinct must have warned her. She turned sharply, her body curled around the baby like a shield. Their eyes locked. "I'm sorry," John said quickly, his hands raised in peace. "I didn't mean to scare you. I wanted to make sure you were all right." "You followed me," she said, cautious but calm. "I did," he admitted. She didn't run, didn't shout. She just looked at him, measuring, judging. "I saw how you fed your son," John said. "I've never seen anything like that. I needed to understand." There was a pause. Then she said quietly, "His name is Noah. I'm Emily." "Noah," John repeated, the name catching on his tongue. 8 months. She nodded. "He loves mashed potatoes." John's voice dropped. "So did my son." Emily blinked. Something shifted in her eyes, but she didn't ask questions. She just listened, like someone who had known grief long enough to recognize its weight in someone else. "I was studying to be a nurse," she said. "Then I got pregnant. His father vanished. My parents, they didn't take it well. I've been on my own since then." Her tone wasn't bitter, just true. "We've lived in this car for 2 months. I clean houses, wait tables when I can." John glanced at the car again. The warm blanket, the plastic grocery bag with neatly folded baby clothes in the back corner. "I can help," he said. "A hotel, warm food, Whatever you need. She raised a hand. I'm not asking for money. That surprised him. Then what do you want? He asked. Emily looked at Noah, sleeping now in her arms. Just one day, she said. One day where it's warm. Full. Safe. That's all. The words hit John harder than any demand ever could. The streetlight flickered above, casting an amber halo over her face. In that glow, something familiar stirred in him. Her eyes. Not Lillian's. Not exactly, but close enough. And the way she held her child, the quiet strength, it cracked something wide open in him, something he had buried beside his wife and son. He took a step back, suddenly unsteady. Thank you, he whispered. Emily looked confused. For what? For reminding me I still have a heart. She didn't reply. She just cradled Noah tighter and resumed the lullaby, her voice barely a murmur. John stood there for a while, the song stitching through the night like thread through a wound. She didn't smile. She didn't close the door. And somehow, that was everything. From that night forward, John couldn't forget her. The girl with the broken shoes and the baby who smiled for mashed potatoes. No matter how many unread emails he deleted or meetings he sat through, their faces lingered in his mind. Quiet, persistent ghosts. He didn't reach out. Not right away. Instead, he began to act. Quietly, deliberately, the way he'd built his empire. He found the sedan again, tucked behind an abandoned church lot. Without announcing himself, without leaving a name, he started leaving small bundles at dawn. A canister of baby formula, a fresh pack of diapers, a sealed container of soup still warm. He even arranged for a pediatric Ian, one he trusted, to visit under guise of a church outreach. Emily didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. But when the doctor left, she held Noah a little longer than usual and whispered, "Thank you," into the silence. At first, she was wary, suspicious. Life had taught her to expect nothing. But these gestures, they never came with conditions. No notes, no smiles required, no strings attached. They just kept coming. Small, steady, real. Little by little, caution gave way to something far more dangerous. Hope. Then, as October crept deeper and the nights grew sharper, disaster struck. Noah had been fussy all day, refusing food. Emily had tried everything, cool clothes, lullabies, rocking him gently in the backseat. But by nightfall, his fever had soared. His breathing had grown shallow. Quick, panicked, heart pounding. She bundled him up and raced to the nearest emergency room. At the front desk, the woman didn't even lift her eyes when Emily explained the baby needed help. "Do you have insurance?" she asked. Emily hesitated. "No." The woman's face changed. Hard, cold. And then she said, "We're at full capacity." "You'll need to wait," the woman at the reception desk said flatly, not lifting her gaze. "Or try another facility." Emily's voice cracked. "He's just a baby. His fever's over 104. He's not responding. Please." "I'm sorry," the woman replied, without a trace of sympathy. "Without proper intake, there's nothing we can do." Emily stumbled back through the hospital's sliding doors into the night. The cold slapped her skin. Her breath came out in clouds. But worse was the silence in her arms. Noah had gone still. Not sleeping. Silent. She clutched him tighter, her body trembling from cold and fear. Her fingers fumbled for her phone, the screen flickering in the dark. She didn't scroll. She didn't type a sentence. Just 2 words. "Help us." She didn't know if he'd come. She didn't even know why she believed he might. But 6 minutes later, headlights flared across the curb, and a black SUV came skidding to a halt. John jumped out before the engine stopped, coat flaring behind him, his face frantic. He didn't speak. He didn't ask. He just held out his arms. Emily placed Noah into them, hand shaking. For the first time, the baby didn't flinch, didn't cry. His tiny hand curled around John's finger, weak, deliberate, trusting, as if he knew. Without a word, John turned and stormed back through the hospital doors, straight to the desk. "I want a doctor. Now," he said, his voice sharp enough to cut steel. "This child has a critical fever. I'll pay every cent. Hell, I'll buy this damn hospital. But if you make me wait another minute, you'll all be out of a job." That was all it took. Within seconds, Noah was taken. Emily collapsed onto a chair in the hallway, shivering, head in her hands. John sat beside her, silent, present. A nurse returned with an update. Noah was stable, resting. They would monitor him overnight. Emily exhaled, one long, shaking breath, as if she'd been holding it since sunset. "You came," she said, barely a whisper. John nodded. "Of course I did." Tears spilled before she could stop them. She leaned into him, her body racked with silent sobs, grief, relief, and everything in between. Her head rested on his shoulder, and John, without a word, held her close. He didn't tell her to calm down, didn't ask for an explanation. He just held her. Outside, the city kept moving. But in that fluorescent corridor, time slowed. It was the first time Emily had allowed herself to break, since becoming a mother. And for John, it was the first time in 10 years that holding someone didn't feel like a betrayal. They didn't talk about love. They didn't define what this was. But something shifted, quiet and permanent. Not because he rescued her, but because, for once, she didn't have to be strong alone. It began with a blurry photo, snapped at night. John Maxwell exiting a hospital with a baby in his arms and a young woman at his side. Within hours, it exploded online. Tech billionaire's late-night rescue. Teen mom and the tycoon. Headlines ran wild. Emily's name didn't stay hidden long. A leaked hospital intake form exposed it. And then came the noise. Opinions. Judgment. Chaos. Some called John a hero. Kind, generous, compassionate. Others were cruel. She planned this. She's playing him. Gold digger. What kind of man gets pulled into something like this? In the apartment John had arranged for her and Noah, Emily sat in the dark. The only light came from her phone. Swipe after swipe, the poison poured in. Each headline stabbed deeper. Her hand shook. Her chest tightened. She turned the phone off, afraid that even the glow of the screen might somehow contaminate her child. Noah stirred in his crib. She stood, soothed him gently, and then returned to sit on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor until morning. When John walked in, he saw it instantly. Her shoulders were stiff, her eyes far away. "I can't do this," she said quietly. "I won't raise my son in a scandal. I won't let him grow up one day wondering if the lies were true." John sat beside her. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said softly. "Neither did Noah." She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. People don't care about the truth. They've already decided who I am." John's jaw tightened. "Then let me tell them," he said. "Let me show them who you really are." That afternoon, he called his publicist. No press statement. No filtered narrative. He would speak himself. Live. The next night, John appeared on national television. No grand setup. Just a quiet studio. Warm lighting. A single chair. The interviewer asked nothing provocative. Just gave him the space to speak. And John began, not with Emily, but with Lillian and Caleb. He spoke of the crash, the years of silence, the emptiness that success had camouflaged. "I stopped living the day they died," he said. Then he spoke of Emily. "She wasn't looking for a handout," he said. "She wasn't even looking for help. She just wanted her son to eat." He paused. "And in doing that, she gave me something I hadn't felt in a decade, a reason to care again." His voice cracked. "She didn't take anything from me. She gave me something no one else could." He looked directly into the camera. "Emily is not a headline. She is a mother. Noah is not a prop. He is a beautiful child. I didn't save them. They saved me." It worked. The next morning, the tide turned. Mothers shared their stories. Nurses explained how many girls like Emily fall through the cracks. Donations flooded shelters. A woman in Kansas started a support fund for single moms. And Emily? She didn't speak to the press. But the following morning, she appeared at John's door. Noah bundled tightly against the cold. She didn't knock. She didn't hesitate. He opened the door before she could. Her eyes were tired, but clear. "I'm not leaving," she said. "If you still want us, we're here." John didn't say a word. He stepped aside, and for the first time in a decade, the door to his home and to his heart was truly open. A family, unplanned, imperfect, and beautiful, had begun. The apartment John had rented for them wasn't anything extravagant, modest by his standards, but it was warm, sunlit, and quiet. 2 small bedrooms, soft gray walls, and windows that caught the morning light just right. Emily moved in with little more than 2 duffel bags, a baby carrier, and the weight of someone who had never known what it meant to exhale in a place that felt safe. But within a week, that space began to shift. Noah's crayon drawing started appearing on the fridge. Tiny socks hung to dry over the heater. The scent of baby lotion and lullabies floated in the air like something sacred. They never defined what they were to each other, not at first. No declarations, no labels, no talk of the future. They simply lived. John started stopping by every morning. At first, he came under the guise of checking in, dropping off groceries or a pack of diapers. But soon, it became something else. A rhythm, a comfort. He'd knock gently, then let himself in. And every time, Noah's face would light up, bouncing in his crib at the sound of the door. Emily would already be in the kitchen, hair in that same soft, graceful knot, coffee brewing. They'd sit, share breakfast, tell small stories, laugh sometimes. John learned how to hold a bottle at just the right angle, how to warm the milk, but not too much, how to change a diaper, awkwardly at first, then with surprising ease. He began to understand Noah's cries, not just the sound of them, but the meaning behind them. Hunger sounded different than discomfort, frustration different than tiredness. And one afternoon, as he rocked Noah to sleep, his tiny hand clinging to John's shirt, something shifted inside him. He didn't want to leave. Not after the nap, not after the hour. He wanted to stay. Emily saw it too. The way John lingered. The way he listened to Noah's babbling like it was music. He never tried to impress her. Never tried to fix anything. He just showed up, consistently, with quiet hands and soft eyes that once held nothing but emptiness. And now they were beginning to reflect light again. She had never known love that didn't ask for something in return. Never known a man who simply stayed. Not to fix her. Not to rewrite her story. But to walk beside her in it. In those soft hours, between bottle feeds and bath times, something new began to grow. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't the kind of love people made movies about. It was slower, deeper, built from presence, not passion. One evening, after Noah had finally fallen asleep, they sat on the balcony under a shared blanket. The city glittered beneath them, gold and blue, but neither of them looked down. John turned to her, his voice quiet. When I lost Lillian and Caleb, I thought that part of me, the part that wanted to care, to belong, died with them. Emily turned, eyes catching the moonlight. It didn't die, she whispered. It waited. They didn't kiss that night. They didn't need to. The silence between them was full, like a promise left unspoken, but fully understood. Emily smiled. Not the polite smile she gave the nurses. Not the tired smile she gave Noah. A real one. Rare. Oh, just for him. And for the first time in years, John smiled back. Soft, honest, lit from somewhere deep inside. They weren't lovers. Not yet a family. Not in name. But there was something stronger. 2 people cracked wide open by grief, finding in each other the slow, quiet beginning of home. It came one afternoon in the form of a plain white envelope, wedged beneath the door like a breeze no one expected. Emily stared at it for a long time before picking it up. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable, tight, neat. Her mother's. Just a few lines. No grand apology. No dramatic pleas. Just this. If there's still a chance to know my grandson, I would like to try. Emily sat at the kitchen table, holding the letter. Noah played nearby, stacking colorful blocks. She didn't cry, didn't scream, but the silence in the room was thick enough to drown in. When John arrived that evening, she was still there, the letter folded gently in her hands. She wrote, Emily said softly, not looking up. He read it, then sat down beside her. What are you thinking? I don't know, she admitted. It's been almost 2 years. They told me I wasn't their daughter anymore. And now, John's voice was calm, you don't owe them anything. Emily turned to him, her eyes uncertain. But Noah, doesn't he deserve to know? Even if where he comes from is broken. John chose his words carefully. Don't let him grow up with the same holes you had. Let him have the choice, to forgive or not, but let it be his. 3 days later, they drove to the town she once called home. Quiet hills, narrow roads, a place where every face seemed to remember more than it should. Her parents' house stood at the end of a gravel drive, white paint a little chipped. The porch swing still creaking in the wind. Emily stood at the foot of the steps, Noah on her hip. His tiny hands clung to her sweater. John stood slightly behind, silent, letting her lead. The front door opened. A woman stepped out, mid-50s, sharp features worn softer by time, and sorrow. Her mother. For a moment, no one moved. Then her mother stepped forward, breath shaky, eyes wide. Her gaze fell on Noah first. Then Emily. Her voice cracked. I wasn't strong, she said. I was scared of what people would think. Scared of losing the version of you I thought I'd raised. And I lost you anyway. Emily said nothing. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her father stepped outside behind her mother, older than she remembered. He looked at Noah like he was seeing something sacred. Noah reached out, a baby's gesture. Innocent, curious, not knowing the weight of what hung in the air. That, somehow, shattered everything. Her mother broke down. She stepped closer, arms out, uncertain. May I hold him? Emily paused. Then, slowly, she placed Noah into her mother's arms, and the older woman held him like she was trying to hold time itself. The soft sob of Emily's mother blended with whispered words. Nonsense, really. But to Noah, every sound was magic. He stared up at her with wide, curious eyes, unaware of the pain his tiny hands were unraveling. John stood a few feet away, silent. This wasn't his moment, not truly, but witnessing it still tugged something deep in his chest. When Emily finally stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her mother, the air shifted. The porch, once heavy with memory, seemed to exhale. The past hadn't vanished, but its edges had softened. Forgiveness, Emily realized, doesn't arrive with thunder. It rises slow, like the morning sun, like healing. That afternoon, they sat around a worn kitchen table, one Emily had once scattered with cereal and homework. Now, there was tea. Noah on her father's knee, babbling between giggles. Laughter echoed through the house for the first time in years. Across the room, Emily caught John's eye. She mouthed, "Thank you." He shook his head with a small smile. "No," he whispered, so quiet it was more breath than sound. "Thank you for going home." 1 year later, the world had changed, not loudly, not publicly, but in all the ways that mattered. No headlines, no noise, just life. It was spring. The same park where their story had begun was now dressed in gold and green. The breeze played in the trees, and sunlight filtered down like a blessing. There was no altar, no spectacle, just a white cloth under an oak tree, a few close friends, and a small wooden arch wrapped in ivy and blue ribbon. At the center stood Noah, nearly 2 now, wobbling across the grass in a navy vest and tiny bow tie. His hands clutched a velvet box with a seriousness only toddlers can summon. John waited a few steps away, not in a designer suit, but in a soft gray blazer, the one Emily once had made him look almost human. His hair was longer, streaked with silver he no longer cared to hide. His eyes, once clouded by sorrow, sparkled with something else entirely now. Hope. When Noah reached him, John knelt down and gently took the box. The boy giggled, proud, then toddled off toward the edge of the clearing where Emily stood, barefoot in the grass, white dress catching the breeze. She'd never looked more beautiful, not because of the dress, not even because of the light behind her, but because of what shone within her, resilience, grace, life. John stepped forward and knelt, ring in hand, and for a moment, everything stilled. "You never asked for anything," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You didn't beg or expect. You just showed up on the worst night of your life and gave me a reason to remember what it feels like, to matter." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing flashy, just right. You didn't take what was left of me, Emily. You gave me what I didn't know I needed. You gave me family. You gave me love. You gave me back a future. A pause. Will you marry me? Emily gasped, hand flying to her mouth as her eyes filled. She nodded once, then again, then dropped to her knees, laughing and crying at once. Yes, she whispered, their arms wrapped around each other, fitting together like two puzzle pieces that had waited years to meet. The minister spoke, brief and kind, while Noah played nearby with flower petals, occasionally glancing up like he was trying to understand what made the grown-ups so emotional. But during the vows, right as John promised to love not only Emily but the little boy who had brought them together, Noah wandered over and hugged John's leg. "Daddy," he chirped. The park fell silent. John looked down, eyes brimming. He picked up the boy with one arm, held Emily with the other. "I love you, son," he whispered. In that moment, sunlight pouring through the trees, arms wrapped around each other, they were whole. John hadn't saved a single mother. She had saved him from grief, from emptiness, from a life so polished it had become hollow. And in place of all that loneliness, a new family had formed, not from blood or design, but from one quiet moment and a plate of mashed potatoes. They weren't perfect, but they were together. And for once, that was enough. From a single whisper in a crowded restaurant, a story of love, redemption, and second chances unfolded. What began as a simple request for leftovers became a journey that redefined what it means to be family. John didn't just open his heart, he opened his life. Emily didn't just survive, she found home. And little Noah, once cradled in a stranger's arms, now walks beside a father who chose him, not by blood, but by love. Because sometimes the most extraordinary stories don't begin with grand gestures, but in the quietest, most ordinary moments. Person with praying hands, if this story touched your heart, if it made you feel, made you hope, or brought a tear to your eye, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Midnight English Stories. Sparkles here. Every tale is told to heal your heart, restore your faith, and remind you that compassion is the greatest miracle of all. We'll see you in the next one.